which even here in the pandemic situation is become more and more challenge for a migrant worker struggling to get the rights. And with those all the problem faced by the migrant worker, we are knowing much that actually there is a country of destination or country of origin, such as Indonesia, for example. There are international instruments that has mandated the government of the countries to protect migrant workers in all stages of migration. We know that with the UN Convention 1990, that's Indonesia already ratified that, and then the CEDAW, and then we know the standard of IRIS, the declaration, the ASEAN Declaration, ASEAN Consensus, GCM, Global Compact on Migration, our campaign on ILO Convention 189 on decent work for domestic worker, and ILO Convention 29 concerning forced and compulsory labor. And how the way that we are keep as a union struggling to protect that the migrant worker during the pandemic, we keep organizing migrant workers both in the country of origin and country destination with the transfer knowledge agenda and those issues about labor rights, women rights, human rights, as well as safe and fair migration, and direct experience and role as BMI member undertook COVID-19 prevention in the country of origin and country of destination. We give legal aid, assistance, and counseling service to migrant workers, and also engaging the local government to be have a concern on their citizens who are working abroad by supplying the health such masks, etc., to send to the migrant worker, and work together with the Indonesian embassy for that. And SBMI further strengthen the economic empowerment agenda through cooperative-based work to keep a socio-economic sustainability, which significantly involve women migrant workers and facilitate them to take part and contribute to the family and community's resilience in time of the pandemic. And during the pandemic, migrant workers lost their opportunity to remigrate or difficulties to continue life, and several start to small business and food production, and some of use their skill on produce the food, and here the SBMI facilitated to start up with the we established of SBMI Mart. And SBMI consistently conduct a campaign to encourage the improvement of the Indonesian government response to protect Indonesian migrant workers from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are also regularly joined for the meeting, for the workshop with multi-stakeholder to produce the guideline how to protect migrant worker, how to taking care of the migrant worker, etc. And we are also do campaign using the flash mob, give a position paper, media release, workshop, webinar, and join with other multi-stakeholder network. So here our member, we have in Singapore and Riyadh, in Jeddah, in Taiwan. And we keep organizing so far, and also economic empowerment during they are working abroad, and also we are strengthening the migrant worker family and also migrant workers that they are when they are returning home. And we just released our position paper, urge the ASEAN country to improve protection in Indonesian migrant worker for the impact of COVID-19 pandemic in the last few months. We give recommendation to ASEAN country to strengthening cooperation, the policy synergy among ASEAN member country to promote the inclusive response to migrant worker affected by COVID-19, and ensure the implementation of ASEAN Forum on Migrant Labor for migrant worker protection during the pandemic, maximize the role of ITER on upholding the human rights for Indonesian migrant worker, then ensure the firm and fair implementation of ACTIP, trafficking in person, in handling migrant workers who experience trafficking in ASEAN region, and ensure the involvement of migrant workers union and TSO in all process of planning, decision making, implementation, and evaluation of all instrument policies and program related to the protection of migrant workers in ASEAN. And this is the recommendation that which I already present it start from the beginning my presentation, that there are a lot of great stuff have happened during the pandemic, so that we are urged for the employer to provide all wages that have been agreed upon the work agreement, give the right to rest, not employing migrant workers beyond the working hours, ensuring the availability of adequate and healthy food, providing access to health service, and not use the excuse for employer to commit violence against migrant workers during the pandemic, providing adequate, safe, healthy accommodation, facilitate the right to communicate to the family, and not to stigmatize and discriminate the migrant workers. And the pandemic should not be used as an excuse for to hold the document. And we also make a recommendation for government in destination countries in ASEAN countries to implement policy that are human rights centered, inclusive, fair, and non-discriminatory, and provide the correct and up-to-date information to migrant workers. And during our work handling cases, and also make strengthening the network with our member in the destination country, we ensure that the need is such a kind right to unionize, right to organize is kind of something compulsory, since that's during the pandemic. The group or even organization member who are in the destination country as a group that can connect to the migrant worker, especially the undocumented migrant worker. So this is the justification that the right to unionize is supposed to bring to every campaign for our work. Then to ensure migrant workers who are positive COVID-19, who are unable to work due to the quarantine and temporary workplace closure to receive their full salary, and we make reintegration program for the migrant worker who repatriate, and many things that we recommend. And we are also make a kind of workshop webinar and send this document to the media to take that government concern about the protection to improve the protection for migrant workers during the pandemic. Here that all our activity, although in the pandemic, we make sure that our work is not stopped. There are more migrant workers. Even now, many Indonesian migrant workers work to Europe, such in Poland, which they are in trafficking. So here we continue to assisting to case for the case handling campaign, and we even make a demonstration. Although we are also take a look on how to make an action which is also keep our safety, keep the distance, etc. Using all the to support the health issue, and this our work. And another thing that we initiating the establishment of migrant worker resources center, that empowering migrant workers start in the village level and engage with the local government and the national government to strengthening the migrant worker, to improve the uh, the access to justice and etc. And we make collaboration with other trade unions such like KSDSI and also other women organizations like Solidaritas Perempuan, Women Coalition in Indonesia, which is Mawar Balkis, because we know that there are many women migrant workers affected by the pandemic and need extra care for that. And yeah, harnessing the potential of women migrant worker, sustainable socio-economic recovery must be in line with the effort in fulfilling the right of migrant worker, decent wage, decent work, right to rest, etc. Here, during the pandemic, when migrant workers come back, there are no job, and then we are trying to start up to make a SBMI Mart, how that our member or any migrant worker in general, when they come back, no job, and then we are urge the government, local government, make a kind of empowerment program for the migrant worker, and we start with the cooperative base as like we call it SBMI Mart. We have 11 branches SBMI Mart now in around 8 provinces in Indonesia with a member of 1,822. This is our effort for the socio-economic recovery, not only depend how to migrate in again and again, but however we are keep trying. That's for any advocacy policy campaign, that's migrate is the rights, and then how to the migrant worker fulfill got their rights. But that is the it's a kind of not by force but by decision that can manage how they migrate. So here my end of presentation. We're looking forward for any further discussion with all of you here. Thank you very much. And back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you for wonderful presentation and to not exceed the time. And the next speaker is Laxman Basnet. You can start. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? Hello, Sunita? Okay, thank you very much for the organizers to invite me here to this forum. I'm not aware of the whole program because of our time constraints, but I would like to say a few things and what I feel about what is happening in the migration world. First of all, I would like to make you aware that the whole migration process has, in that process, the workers has no role at all. That means workers cannot express their own feelings, what is happening to them into the whole process. It is the whole migration is the agreement between the two countries, country of origin and country of destination. And country of destination leads the way for the whole migration process. And country of destination. Country of origin has to agree with the country of destination. This is my feeling. What I'm telling you. And we have seen there are two processes going on. One process in 2006, it is called Abu Dhabi Dialogue, where there are country of destination, that is GCC countries and Malaysia. And other process is Colombo process, where about 14 countries from South Asia and East Asia, they are part of the country of origin. And they meet once in a while. And then Abu Dhabi Dialogue decides what are the agenda and if there is any change has to be made. So, but in the whole process, the workers are not the players. So they cannot express. So first of all, we don't know. I just heard this morning that UAE is going to bring people without any cost of recruitment. So the first is cost of recruitment or recruitment process. And GCM gives the recruitment process the right or all obligations to the country of origin, like Nepal or India or South Asia. But that they cannot decide how to discuss with the country of destination like GCC countries. The reason is country of origin, those who are suppliers, don't want to antagonize the companies there or the governments there. So they have to agree. So this is a very, very cumbersome process. And before pandemic also, there were a lot of problems which, try to help, but in paper or in discussions, a lot of, when you hear that there's a lot of changes coming up, but in practical, not much change has happened. Some change has happened, but I don't say there's no change. But fundamental change is not there. In the last 10 years, 14,000 people have died in Nepal. And you can imagine what happens. It's not only these people, 14,000, but the people in the family. 3 generations are affected. The one generation, all young people are in GCC countries, and their previous generation and their future generation, both the generations are affected by this. In 2015, Saktuk went to Qatar and invited the Human Rights Commission of Nepal and Qatar, and they made some agreement how to safety, security, and well-being. But the process is too cumbersome, and people don't want to, the workers don't want to go and complain that I'm facing this. And now in Qatar or Doha, there are unions organized by the government and the employers, and they say it's working. Just few months ago, they were asking for their wages, and some of them were deported. We have the report of that, but I don't want to take much of time. So then the pandemic has come. What happened? The country of origin also locked their borders, and they were left on the street. In New York Times, during the pandemic, we saw the African ladies, those who are coming for domestic workers, they were left in the street, or they were left in front of their embassies, and no one is bringing them back. So it's a sort of a process of desperation, what to do and what not to do. So there was much hue and cry around this subcontinent. I'm talking about the subcontinent because I'm the General Secretary of the Subcontinent South Asian Regional Trade Union Council. India sent some aircraft and they brought some people. Nepal also did that, and so is other countries also brought back some people. But after a long, long discussion and persuasion to the government. So it looks like that migrant workers is also not in the agenda of the country of origin governments. So those who are here, I expect that when I see the GLU, and I expect you to be the trade unionist movement, the first thing is, where do we go to protect the migrant workers? We have to ask our own governments to protect the migrant workers. And the borders were closed. We persuaded our government to open the border, but very rarely, very restrictively, borders were opened, very restrictively. And people went through a lot of difficulties. They were put into the quarantine, which is not a quarantine, but it's a group of people locked into a room, which made more vulnerable to the disease. They were withheld from going back to the villages, but some municipality leaders came to the border and rescued them and took them to the houses, because now the elections were going to happen, so they were all afraid of that. And they lost employment, and they did not know, and some of them are still here. They don't know whether their job is there or not. Flights were suspended, and I understand not for the migrant workers, for other workers, other people, travelers, they paid an exuberant price for their tickets, and from GCC countries, when they came back to their own countries, they had to pay and ask money from their families. As it is, there was no access to the health, and we were asking our government that when the vaccine came out, we asked our governments to provide vaccine for the migrant workers. The basic thing is why this is happening. Because workers have no right there. They cannot talk. They cannot say what is going on with them. And if they do, they were taken to the police stations and deported. So when they cannot speak, there are all kinds of reduction of money on their wages. And I think in South Asia it comes to around billions of dollars. The workers yet have to be received. And the government became concerned when the foreign reserve is going down. They became very alarming. You see what happened in Sri Lanka. I don't want to discuss all these things. and the reintegration process. What we saw, if you don't have money in your pocket, if you go back to the village, no one is ready to accept you if you don't have money. So reintegration was also very difficult. And there was no social protection for the migrant workers. There is no social protection. Although Nepal has introduced social protection for its workers, but no occupational health and safety was not in the priority. And shift in the technological innovations, a lot of workers have been jobless and they cannot get skilled. So these are the basic things. So what we would like to ask you, that the whole new paradigm has to be shifted. There has to be a new social contract for general workers, migrant workers, and informal workers. I see that three kinds of workers exist in the three categories. And the first priority is you have to respect them, workers. If we bring some people to our own country and ask them to develop my country, you have to respect them. Give them all the rights. Otherwise, why should they go? So these are the basic understanding we have to create in a new social contract. We are campaigning for a new social contract with the social protection, right to work, and right to negotiate, freedom of associations. These are the basic 5 points. It has to be enshrined. ITUC, that's my organization. That, okay, time is up, so I will keep quiet. So if you have anything to ask, we'll do that. Yeah. But it's a more of a, I giving you a lecture and we giving you a lecture. We have to discuss and come to a solution. Your solution, maybe we can understand what you think about it, the new social contract, and bring the workers into the forefront, into the negotiation table. Finally, without the right of the workers on the table, discussion table where everything is discussed or negotiated, workers' voice has to come there. Thank you.
Thank you for the speakers. It was so. It's a good information, and we can explore in our discussion, including how the reintegration happened during the COVID, because I think it's important since the migrant workers could not just come back; they also need to bring something to the family, and our next speaker is Chiranjeevi Baral, the Vice Chair of National Network on Safe Migration. Floor is yours. Keep in mind for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Sarina, and the organizer of this conference. In terms of talking about protecting migrant workers during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm most specific on wage theft of migrant workers. I'll focus more on the issue of wage theft, and I have some specifications. My presentation is primarily based on the research on wage theft that NNSM, National Network for Safe Migration, carried out in 2021. However, I took references from other research reports also on the issue, like different volumes of reports on waste theft by Migrant Forum in Asia, NRNA's Non-Resident Nepali Association, the diaspora organization's ILO-funded project completion report that ran for 20 months, some government policies, directives and decisions, and NGO's activities based in Nepal, Sartuk's report, Center for Labor Migration, Seslam's research report, and then this topic, my talk will be specific on Nepal's issue. And I had the presentation slides, but unfortunately I forgot to bring it today, and then I asked my daughter to take a photo of it and send it to me. Please allow me to use my mobile phone to look at it. So waste theft is a long-standing problem. However, COVID-19 has heightened this issue because hundreds of thousands of migrant workers who returned home, they returned empty-handed without taking their pay, remuneration, without taking their benefits, without taking the dues that they had to get or they owed. And then the issue became more serious to the stakeholders, including civil society organizations and the government alike. The data suggests that 142,000 Nepali migrant workers were repatriated until April 2021. And more than 5 lakh Nepalis returned during the pandemic period. However, there is not much information as to how many of them were the victims of waste theft and how many of them lost their salaries. A Migrant Forum Asia's research shows 488 people registered, or the migrant workers, returned migrant workers registered the waste theft cases with Migrant Forum in Asia between 2020 to May of 2021. And People Forum for Human Rights based in Nepal, it registered 217 cases of waste theft in between 1.5 year. And then it is the media report shows that 43 returnees had filed a complaint with Department of Foreign Employment that they were the victims of waste theft. So this is the situation. And our research, NNSM's research shows, we based our research on 2,241 returnees with regard to waste theft in 2021. And the information were collected, the data were collected from the member organizations of the network, NNSM. There are 32 member organizations, NGOs, working for the rights of migrant workers. So the data were collected from the organizations, member organizations of NNSM, in between 24 March to 18 September of 2020. And it shows that 95% of those waste theft cases were from Gulf and Malaysia. And we studied the waste theft cases basically on 6 indicators. Either non-payment of basic wage or minimum wage, or of their salary, non-payment of overtime, non-payment of contractually owed benefits, non-negotiated reduction of salaries, and retention of dues upon their contract termination. So this, we found generally, basically, these 6 types of wage theft victims when we had the research on wage theft victims. And then our research found that 33% returnees during COVID received less than agreed salary. It's a form of wage theft. 46% people, respondents, didn't receive any payment of their overtime work. 53% people, they said that they were forced to sign on the paper, either in the blank paper or no complaint anywhere paper. It shows that they were asked by their employer to sign on the paper, asking them, persuading them not to tell anyone that they had not received any payment or received any wages. So they were forced to sign on these papers. And non-payment of dues accounted for 73%. Their salaries were reduced. 30% people's salaries were reduced. And the salaries were reduced, but only with 27% people, the consent was taken with only 27% people. And 64% people said they were asked to have unpaid leaves without paying their dues. And only 36% had given their consent for the unpaid leave. However, despite all this big volume of the cases of wage theft, only 17% victims had filed cases, either in Nepal or in destination country. And it shows the gravity of wage theft. Migrant Forum Asia's report shows the average wage lost per worker was $1,446 US. And then lakhs of money was lost by the country. And then government did many initiatives during this time. Some initiatives, not many, but some initiatives, though some of them had started before COVID-19. For example, Department of Foreign Employment is a dedicated agency, and it monitors and it monitors the exploitation, including wage theft. And then Nepali missions also are watching the cases of wage theft, including wage theft. And then Nepal government has recently introduced a reintegration guideline by which wage theft victims can also take benefits. And there was one guideline to repatriate the stranded Nepali migrant workers, in which the data was collected by the government as to if they had any dues or if they had filed any cases. So there are some initiatives like, and then civil society, some of the civil society initiatives were also there. NNSM itself carried out a research upon which my presentation is based on that research now. And People Forum, another organization, it facilitated the compensation of the victims of 20 victims of wage cases until 2020. AMCAS, PNCC, these are organizations in Nepal. WAREC and others, they also provided food, shelter, and holding center support. And then YNRNA also provided support and then help to recover the wage and pays of 10 migrant workers. As well as Sarthuk did a research on waste research, including waste theft. I read it very minutely today morning. Sheslam did the research, and then other civil society organizations like NNSM itself, it did a conference, Returning Migrant Workers Conference, and then it endorsed 19-point Kathmandu Declaration. Among them, one of the point was about waste theft, requesting the government and different departments of government to make a better coordination and to play an effective role to redress or to address the issue of waste theft and the victims of waste theft. But thank you very much. My time is over.
Thank you so much to understand our time constraint. And yeah, thank you also to show us how vulnerable the migrant workers during the pandemic and how important social protection for them. And for the last but not least, we have Christine. Please use your time for 10 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. So I'm Christine again, and today I'm going to be discussing this topic, heightened vulnerability, contradictory policy, and I'll be offering some insights from political economy on the reintegration of Filipino migrant workers in the pandemic and beyond. So as you know, this panel talks about protecting migrant workers during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So what I'll be doing is I'll be offering some inputs for us to think about more broadly, especially to provoke discussion when thinking about migration policy in the Philippines. Sorry, I think the mics are feedbacking of each other. Okay. Yeah, can I just pull it closer? There. Okay. So if you're familiar somewhat with the political economy of the Philippines, you would know that migrant labor is a structural feature of the Philippine labor market. In 2020, the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs estimated that the stock of Filipino workers, that includes the deployed workers and those already staying in receiving countries, have amounted to over 6.1 million. That is 3 times the amount of Filipino workers in overseas employment since 1990. And that represents 2.2% of the total global migration in the world. So you can see here that 6.1% is a huge part of the Philippine labor force that is around 48 million Filipinos. And this points to a very permanent feature of the Philippine economy thus far. And when we think about COVID-19, there have been 2 specific policy directives by the government, and that includes repatriation, and after which reintegration is supposed to take place. So as of December 2020, the Department of Foreign Affairs has repatriated 327,511 workers. And among these workers, 71% were land-based and 29% were sea-based, because a lot of Filipinos are also seafarers. And a survey by the International Organization of Migration summarized the profile of about 8,000 overseas workers, and they found that there are some trends that can be observed, including 70% of Filipino migrant workers that returned to the country were terminated or their contracts were not renewed. So this really points to the precarity of work in general, even of skilled professions in which Filipino migrants are engaged. Second, there is also a gendered aspect to it, such that female OFWs, especially those who were not repatriated, had less access to employer-funded return. They had to cover a lot of the expenses, and even for the Department of Foreign Affairs sponsored repatriation, Filipino women had lower access to them, especially because of mobility restrictions in the regions where Filipino women serve as domestic workers. And in terms of reintegration, the government claims that it has several. I'll be showing you in another slide. And the initiatives had two objectives, primarily to provide psychosocial support to these displaced workers who had to return to the country. And second, and I believe the most important, is to enable returning OFWs to generate income from either employment or entrepreneurship. So these were the goals of our reintegration. However, the results tell us quite a different side of it. Over 50% of OFWs who returned actually applied for reintegration in these several livelihood programs, but only 26% were actually able to access these. So in the 2 years when these were deployed, it seemed that there is very limited coverage, and even in the effectiveness of that coverage is being questioned. So these are some of the policies or the programs that were instituted to support livelihoods of OFWs. Most of them included cash assistance or initial payouts in order for you to start a business either online or in your homes with a small amount of money. So these were some of the livelihood programs that were initiated. But as we said earlier, the impacts of these are very, very uneven, and we see here that reintegration is a policy that presupposes that migration is a temporary measure. When you say reintegration, it often assumes that migrant workers go abroad, work for a specific period of time, and return to the country to either find employment or entrepreneurship. The framework of it does not presuppose that migration is permanent or that workers will stay there for their lifetimes and retire in the Philippines. And another presupposition is that the economy will be prepared to accommodate the flows of OFWs who will be returning. And if we listen to the discourse of the government, they say that labor migration in the Philippines is a temporary measure. That has been the case, according to them, since 1974. Yes. The then President Marcos launched the labor expert policy, according to him, to ease the balance of payments problems at the heels of the 1972 oil price shock, and also to counter domestic unemployment, which was very high, despite very high levels of education as well. In terms of tertiary education, the Philippines outpaces all of its neighbors in the 1970s and the 1980s. And also because of the English-speaking capabilities as a former colony of the United States, that had to be a very attractive feature for out-migration from the Philippines. And the discourse that labor migration is temporary has been echoed by subsequent administrations, even as the stock of migrants has increased triple over the last 3 decades. And most recently, the statements by our president, Marcos Jr., not my president, but the Philippines, they point to the promotion of migration as a complement to reintegration. So his 9-point agenda points to faster deployment of migrant workers as a key pillar of his approach to migrant work. And this is, of course, reflected, even though he wasn't president yet, there was a continuity to the policy such that in the first quarter of 2022, the OFW deployment has breached pre-pandemic levels. And so we see that this is proof that reintegration was ineffective. And I won't have time to elaborate on this, but the creation of the recent Department of Migrant Workers actually reflects this contradiction. And how is this contradiction being played out in the Philippine economy? Remittances are the best indicator for this. Because as we see here, the stock of remittances has increased to about 10% of GDP, which is a huge amount, for a country like the Philippines. So when you look at the gross national income where remittances are accounted for, and you look at the GDP, there's a huge 10% gap between them because of the scale of the contribution of remittances to the Philippine economy. And this has bolstered consumption, even though wage stagnation has been happening for many wage workers in the Philippines. And as we see here, it actually increased up to like 4 or 5% of global remittances, right? And I'll end here. And I see that there is a fundamental contradiction when we look at OFW reintegration and the continuing promotion of labor export. The first is overseas export policy is functioning as a social safety release valve, as the Philippine government is not deliberately promoting employment, investment. It thus relies on overseas employment policy to solve these in indirect ways. And second, what necessitates the continuation of migration or labor export in the Philippines? First, we have very persistent import dependence on basic commodities, and also we have accumulated large amounts of foreign-denominated debt, especially during the pandemic. And so we see that the balance of payments constraint that creates this necessity is very structural. And lastly, we see that the policy of the government towards investment and employment has been scattershot. It's basically market-driven, based on the demand of the global market, and this undermines the framework of reintegration, both in employment and in investment. Because if the labor market cannot absorb more workers, how can OFWs be re-employed? And second, if the investment policy is not reoriented towards organizing and centralizing small amounts of capital, then there is no path for OFWs to be entrepreneurs. And so I end with this question, perhaps, that we can discuss more. Is it overseas export policy that is temporary, as the Philippine government says it is, or is it reintegration policy that is temporary? So there, I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you for all of our speakers. Yeah, now we have time. We have time to have a discussion. Yeah, we have 20 minutes. We have 20 minutes to have a discussion. So, yeah, any thoughts, questions, statement? Thank you. And yeah, we also we have participants online. Please, for the participants who join us online, if you have a question or statement or any thoughts, you can raise your hands. Yeah. Fish, you can speak. We cannot hear you. What should I do? Oh, please wait. We still cannot hear you. We're trying to.
But people on the Zoom can
I
hear.
know we can hear you. Okay.
Hello, test, test,
Yeah,
test,
yeah,
test, test, test,
yeah, we
test,
can hear you now. We can hear
test,
you.
test, speaking, speaking, speaking.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Test, test, test.
You
Still
can
cannot
start to
hear.
speak.
Hello. Yeah, I think it's the people at the hotel cannot hear. Hello. Okay. Thanks, Werner, for confirming the voice. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm happy to join with you from Hong Kong. I'm the LPG GLU program 2016-2017. Currently, yep. Currently, I'm the regional coordinator for the IDWF, the International Domestic Workers Federation. So thanks for having this panel on migration, which is very important, and we can foresee with the COVID-19 pandemic, when the economic crisis so serious in many countries, especially in the countries of origin, we can actually foresee that more migrant workers will be there, will go out from the origin, and the destination will have more. And I've just been to Malaysia, and Malaysia has already mentioned that they have a high demand for migrant workers. So I think this is one thing that we have to take note of, how we will tackle the more increase of migrant workers when we have already a big number now. And second, the last speaker from Christine, and if I remember right, whether this is a reintegration or temporary migration, I think both answer is no. Myself being a union organizer for domestic workers, for migrant domestic workers for a long time, and for IDWF, we have migrant domestic workers organized in several Asian countries with leaders in Hong Kong, Singapore, Macau, Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia, as well as Kuwait, Jordan, Qatar. We can really see that first, the countries of origin and destination, they have no intention to have migrant to be long-term. It has to be temporary, meaning the destination will not provide any retirement benefit and social benefits. So that will be a big implication on the social protection. Second, the countries of origin only want to deploy workers to work overseas with their remittances. So both countries of origin and destination don't have any political will protect migrants. They only want their youth, labor, and don't want to provide any social protection. And I have seen so many migrants, when they return, they actually left with nothing. They are not earning anymore. The families also abandon them. So so my question will be, because this panel, all the speakers are from the countries of origin, and very little is mentioned and talked about the organizing. But so far, the organizing of migrant workers is so little and so small. We do have migrant domestic workers organized, although they are still very small, from membership like 20 to membership like almost 2,000. But they do strike a voice and representation in the public and the media, and also can have a space for dialogue and representation when we have dialogue with the governments. So I hope, but unfortunately, the trade union in the countries of destination, for most of the time, still have a problem with the term domestic workers. The trade union are still calling domestic workers as maids and servants. Even in Malaysia, for example, the Employment Act has just revised the term only from servants into domestic employee, although rights are all excluded. So I want to say, number one, where is the trade union revitalization to recognize migrants in their representation, in their freedom of association, to allow migrants to form union and to be office bearers, number one. And number two, which is something that we have to consider, when we have groups like SBMI who organize returnee migrants, what is the role of them when they mainly provide case handling and surveys for reintegration, and what is the criteria and definition in organizing? You cannot just have one or two person having cases, having SBMI to handle the case, and then you announce that you have a group there. Organizing and having a group, union, organization, you must have criteria on building up leadership, building up dues paying membership. So yeah, sorry, Dina, for having the criticism here, because since the beginning when SBMI formed in 2008, I have been always want to work and collaborate very much SBMI and have big expectation, but I haven't seen the result there on the organizing, and also what's the vision and mission there. So yeah, so I think there must be some limitation and challenges that we have to understand and we have to evaluate.
I think we
so
have your point.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we have your point now.
Yeah, sorry, I raised many points.
Yeah, yeah. Since we still have 15 minutes, I think we can have one more question. Yeah, we can have one more. Please, please use your time wisely.
I just wanted to say that the point got resolved in some sense, because I was going to question about wage theft. But as Comrade Lakshman pointed it out, that the country of origin doesn't want to ruffle feathers with the country of destination. Most of the cases, there can't be an intervention from the part of the country itself. And as our comrades from Hong Kong pointed out, that the unions are still not willing to organize these workers. So at some point, maybe there needs to be a process between the state and the unions in destination countries, where they intervene to make sure that the wage theft does not happen anymore. And as Christine also points out, towards reintegration and reorganizing, maybe at that point, that should be one of the stipulations as it goes into about wage theft. So I think my question was resolved as the conversation went in. Thank you.
I think we should yeah, we can have we should continue to the speakers to answer the question or response, to have a response. And if I can elaborate, we have some question here, especially about how we can protect migrant workers since they are not recognized in labor law and other stuff, and also how about the organizing. Maybe I can. You can be first. You can answer. You can respond.
Like what?
Yeah. If you have thoughts. Yeah, I think maybe later. Yeah. Yeah, brother, you can go first if you want to have your responses.
What I would like to say is, it's not the union who is reluctant to organize them. First of all, the space of freedom is shrinking in all of the Asian countries. Free space is very shrinking. That's one thing. The other thing is, governments of the country of destinations are so reluctant to do anything for organizing. We would like to, I have been there in many countries to organize, but it looks like that the flow of remittance is so valuable for them that they don't want to cut themselves from the supply chain. Like brother from Bangladesh said, there is a very high cost of recruitment. Yes, we know it. It's about $5,000, which is about 17 months' salary in Bangladesh to be recruited. 17 months of salary is a huge amount of money, and sometimes it's much more than that. In Pakistan, it's almost $8,000 to $10,000 to go abroad. And no government is ready to say that, okay, we are not taking any recruitment fee. We will send people very easily. Because there is a use of money in every level. So nobody is trying to correct the migration process itself. We have to reorganize, unionize them before they go. Unions are, I went to the labor department, say, can I give pre-departure training to the, no, you cannot. We need a civil society organization. They will provide the pre-departure orientation. You know how it is pre-departure orientation is given? At the airport, you sign that I have been trained in pre-departure program, and the paper is given there. So is the contract. So whole process is such that it's all informal. It goes into a very informal. And when sister says that which is temporary, the migration is temporary or reintegration is temporary. It's both things are temporary. We are not interested, the country of destination is not interested to commit any proper documentation of the migrant workers. They are only in the profit. Say, okay, if you make many conditions for the country of destination, they will shift to the other country. Like in Bangladesh, in South Asia, Bangladesh and Nepal is competitor to each other because the process. I work very closely with Bangladeshi unions. I'm a union member. So I work with Bangladeshis. Our things are exactly same. Unskilled, uneducated, disorganized workers, and cheap. When the buyer come from GCC countries, we are ready to accept the lower cost of sending people on a minimum wages, lower cost. So the buyer comes here and says, okay, Bangladesh is ready to give me for $150 or any amount. Then they come here and they say that Bangladesh is ready to give for $150 and they go to Bangladesh. And Nepal is ready to give us cheaper. So then we compete without facing each other. What we are trying right now, the union is trying, make a union of the countries, not the union of the unions, union of the country, and ask them to fight for the rights of the workers. That is the only way. Until and unless the South Asian make a new minimum standards of recruitment and minimum standard of a standard contract, and we all abide by that minimum standard of contract, nothing is going to be changed. But South Asian countries are not ready to come together and sit in a table and discuss what is the problem of our workers. Oh, it's a Nepal's problem, it's a Bangladesh problem, it's their problem. Why should we make a union of the countries and discuss our problem and try to sort it out? We are not ready. We are hungry for more demand, more export. We are not sending people. We are exporting commodities from here, but not in the process of the commodities. Like if you export anything from Bangladesh, one more minute, if you allow me. Yeah. If you export anything from Bangladesh, you need a letter of credit from the bank that you will pay for whatever commodities comes from. Like एकछिनपछि फोन गर्छु, 1 minute है त. When you export any goods and services to foreign country, you have to have a letter of credit from the bank guarantee that it will be paid. But there is no such guarantee for millions of workers from South Asia going into the GCC countries and Malaysia. We don't even know. When we send one people to GCC country or Malaysia, he will come back. We don't even know where will he be there in next 6 months' time. So this is a very informal economy, but done in a very organized way to benefit very few up there. I'll tell you only one thing, lastly. Just 1 minute. You have to listen to this. Nepal had only 2 banks in 1995. Only 2 banks. Nepal had only 1 airlines in 1995. Now we have about 30 flights from different airlines every day. And we have 32 banks in Nepal. And each of them, I just saw their bank balance. In trillions, they have made benefit in trillions. We have a friend in bank in the back, Mr. Bordakoti. He was one of the senior executive of the union. He knows it. That
okay.
They are not ready to change the
I think
migration process. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have your point now. Dina, please, you can go to speak, and please bear in mind we have 5 minutes. Go strike on your point.
Who is speaking?
Online. Dina, can you join with us? Can you let Dina know? I think while waiting for Dina ready, we can give the floor to. Yeah. Oh, okay. Dina, please, we only have now 3 minutes. Go strike on your point about how we can organize, like genuinely organize the migrant workers.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Sister Fish, for the evaluation. Don't say sorry if to say something good, the criticize something to evaluate to make it more our work become better and better. It's really a thing that we need also. Yeah. You know that when SBMI established, actually the first thing what we are thinking about how to encourage more and more migrant worker organized in destination country. We established our union in country of origin since we know that not all destination country give a freedom of association and unionization, such like in Hong Kong. Other country mostly they are not give migrant worker free to join or make a union. So this is our kind of strategy when we establish the union in country of origin, and migrant worker before depart, they can become our members. So when they are in the destination country, they can still in the, our umbrella. We know very well that it's kind of a challenge to organize in destination country, and sometimes that's we already support for the leadership, but when the leadership come back home, we lost again our cadre. So this is the challenge, and we know very well that we really also hope also in ever our member in destination country, they are even make a kind of organization that really organization, that there is a monthly dues there is a structure, there is a division of a task, not only patronized by one person. This is the union work that we do understand with that. And also we encourage, even up to now, we are struggling for that. For example, when we come to Jeddah and Riyadh, we even keep introduce them with what the work of union, how they are, if they are working with the embassy, for example, if there is an issue that migrant worker, our member in country of origin make a kind of criticism with the work of a government in destination country, of even our embassy, to make that our union in destination country can support for the union. It's not on behalf they are become speaker of the embassy there. So this is a kind of the thing that's we even give a kind of understanding, and this is a challenge because with the distance, only if we have a meeting in the destination country, we try to get our time to visit the other friend there, and then give a kind of a leadership training, case management training, just like what we did in Malaysia last meeting with the MFA member. So we extend there for the 3 days meeting to make the member about the work of union, and then how to handle the case, how to connect with the network, how to connect with the union in the country of origin. So this is just not the easy task, but we know that's this is the thing that is supposed to be supported by the trade union also in destination country. I know that the Hong Kong CPU in Hong Kong give support, and other NGO also in destination countries, such in Malaysia, give mean support for the migrant worker. But we have also limitations to our union itself come to the destination country with all the lack that we have. So we are trying to connect with the other network in destination country, can work together and then support that our member there. So this is our try to encourage, and we are never give up for that, although this is a very very challenged, especially if the leadership come home, so we can continue to encourage them to join in the union in the country of origin. So so far that's we organize is start from the before they depart, and then when they come back, they whenever they come home in other province, they can join in our union in different province. I hope that's my answer, give you answer, but yeah, we know that is the challenge, and we also struggling for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dina. Our time is up. Yeah, I think, yeah, I should ask should we go on break? Yeah, can you talk in 1 minute for each? Okay, yeah, you can go.
In 1 minute, I just say thank you for completely listening to our incomplete talks. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone as well. And based on the responses to the question that I posed, that it cannot be permanent for receiving countries because they can provide social protection, but it also cannot be permanent for reintegration in the sending countries because we want the remittances to continue. Because of that, it highlights the increasing and permanent precarity of our migrant workers. So I hope we can continue the work to organize them and to realize that their precarity and our precarity is very much linked and should be addressed in unison. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for all our speakers. I think we can end our discussion now because we have exceeded 5 minutes. And yeah, thank you for all of the audience to join. Yep, that's all. Have a nice break.